Welcome everybody. It's TPH Live. As I say every day, live from my living room. And our goal here is quite simple: to give you a sanity break in these insane times, to help teach you, at whatever level you're at. Whether it's the first time you've ever meditated or whether you've been in the game for a while, we bring some of the best meditation teachers in the world to teach you how to work with your own mind to navigate this pandemic, the economic woes, all of it. The other goal we have here is to create a sense of community at a time when so many of us feel isolated, even if we're jammed into a home with other people. Many of us feel cut off. So that's also what we're trying to do. So thank you for joining us. And today, our teacher, very happy to have Kristin Neff, who has been a pioneer in the area of self-compassion, which can sound a little gooey to some of us, well, to me at least, but she's been able to marshal a ton of really compelling evidence in this area. So, Kristin, thanks for joining us. I know you're beaming in from Austin, Texas. Can you give the folks a little bit of a sense of your background?
Yeah, so I'm a professor at UT Austin, and I've been studying self-compassion for almost 20 years now. I started out in self-concept development, and then I found out about self-compassion when I started practicing meditation. And I was actually going through a very hard time, and I started trying to be kinder, more compassionate, and supportive to myself, and it immediately made a huge difference in my life. And so as a researcher, I thought, well, why don't we study this? I know it helps me. Maybe we can see if it helps everyone. And so really my life has been devoted to the study of self-compassion, and then more recently, figuring out ways to teach people how to be more self-compassionate.
And this isn't, I've interviewed you several times. It's important to say this isn't just being so nice to yourself that you never get anything done, or you're constantly telling yourself how great you are. It's important to make that distinction.
Yeah, exactly. It's not self-esteem. It's actually the ability to be okay with your imperfections. But here's the thing, if you care, it's really about caring about yourself, and wanting to do what you can to alleviate your own suffering. And so even though we accept that we're imperfect human beings, if we care about ourselves, we're naturally going to want to change behaviors that are unhealthy, to kind of learn and grow as much as we can. So self-compassion helps us be motivated. It helps us be more responsible, take more responsibility. We go to the doctor more, we practice safe sex, we do what we need to do to be healthy and happy. We're more likely to apologize for others because we aren't defending our egos all the time, because it's okay to be imperfect. So really, I think there's 2,500 studies now on the benefits of self-compassion. So there's a large literature showing that it doesn't make you selfish. It makes you more giving to others, right? More responsible, more motivated. It's actually, the word self is there, but what happens with compassion is when we recognize that everyone is imperfect and everyone leads an imperfect life, we actually become less self-focused. Instead of blaming ourselves at something I've done, or instead of saying, oh, poor me, my life is so horrible, as if everyone else is living a perfect life, we just recognize that imperfection, this is part of the shared human experience. And so by framing our own experience in the shared human experience, we're actually a lot less self-focused when we're self-compassionate.
Great. And you've done a great service by leading the charge on this research, because it's a concept that's hard for, cynics like me. Maybe skeptic would be a better word than cynic.
Yeah.
Skeptics like me to embrace, but you've been able to build you and your colleagues to build such an impressive body of evidence to suggest this has a vast array of benefits. So thank you for that. And thank you for being here today. I know you're going to lead us on a meditation. Why don't I hush and let you do so?
Yes. Okay. So self-compassion really has three main components, and the meditation I'm going to do is going to invoke all three of them. The first is mindfulness, being able to tune in and be aware of your suffering, right? And often, like in this situation, we're often so busy just trying to go to the grocery store and take care of people. We need to first pause and check in and kind of be mindful of how difficult it is. And then this common humanity I was talking about is part of it. But the third element really is kindness, or you might say even love, right? Compassion is the ability to hold our pain with love. So I'm going to lead us through a practice where we try to bring in these elements, okay? So if everyone just closes their eyes. All right, and just take a couple deep breaths to ground and settle yourself. Okay, just see if you can feel your body, the weight of your body on the chair, your feet on the floor. And so just get in touch with what's coming up for you right now, emotionally. For the vast majority of people, that's going to be things having to do with the pandemic, right? The fear, the uncertainty. Maybe you are sick, a loved one is sick, or maybe you've even lost someone. So there's a lot of pain around right now. So see if you can kind of allow yourself to get in touch with that pain. Take a pause and see if you can actually turn toward it. Right? If it starts to become overwhelming, you can pull back. But to the extent that it feels okay, it feels safe, see if you can turn toward that pain and just validate it. Right? Mindfully. This is really hard. This is really hard. Right? And see if you can use any language, internal language, that just really helps validate what you're going through. This is a time of suffering for all of us. And then we really do want to remember that we aren't alone in this. And, you know, in this particular situation, it's actually easier than most to remember that this is impacting billions, literally billions of people around the globe. Right? And so just take a moment if you can connect with that sense of togetherness in this situation. Right? We often kind of tend to get lost in our own struggles. And some people's struggles are more difficult than others, without a doubt. And yet, everyone at some point, in some way, is suffering right now. This is part of the shared human experience at this moment. And so now what we need really to hold this pain is kindness, right? And so one way I'd invite you to show yourself kindness is to use some sort of physical gesture. Maybe your hands on your heart or your stomach, or maybe giving yourself a hug. Please don't touch your face, right? We need to be careful of that, but some physical touch. You know, one of the things we're often deprived of in these self-quarantining times is touch. So just give yourself a touch and let yourself feel the warmth of your hands. Let your hands ground you. Feel the connectedness with your hands. And trying to give yourself some words of kindness and support, something that you really need to hear right now. Right? Something you might naturally say to a friend or a loved one. It could be something like, you know, I'm here for you. I'm so sorry this is happening. I care. I want you to be well. I won't abandon you. Right? Just kind of allow some space for whatever you need to hear to arise. So let yourself receive this message. Take it in. And then letting go of the practice. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And so that's really just called the self-compassion break. You just bring in mindfulness to your pain. Remember common humanity, that we aren't alone. And then give yourself some kindness, physically, through words, whatever way you can think of to help you through the moment. And it's a pretty effective practice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the hand on the heart thing, but I do use this 3-part practice quite a bit in terms of when I notice pre-corona, when I would notice self-criticism around, how I look in the mirror or something like that. And just, it kind of just developed it as a habit of being aware that this is happening. Recognizing that a lot of people do this. This is not unique to me. I'm not sort of suffering alone here. And the third is just sort of some phrase. I prefer a phrase like, it's okay.
Yes.
Or it is a classical phrase from the Buddhist tradition, like, may you be free from suffering or something like that. And it becomes kind of a reflex, which I found just personally is actually it's a nice, I struggle a little bit with the artificiality of the phrase and all that stuff. But actually it breaks the momentum and the mindless momentum of self-criticism in a way that I found to be quite useful.
That's right. And that's why we encourage people to find language that doesn't seem artificial, so it's okay, or, got this, or anything. It doesn't really matter what it is. And it can be something that you aren't arguing with. And I understand about hand on the heart, and, touch is optional, but the really powerful thing about touch, even if it's holding your own hand, is it actually activates the parasympathetic nervous system, because as babies, we're born into the world, and touch is the main way that care is conveyed to us through our parents. So, you can get to your body and help it feel safe and calm down, even if your mind doesn't go there. But if it doesn't work for you, that it's not mandatory, but it can be very helpful, especially if you find a touch that works for you personally.
Yeah, I believe you. You're unquestionably correct. You know the science here. I think the problem is mine, not yours. Rebecca.
Look what you just did, Dan. You just put your hand on your heart.
Yes, I did. It was heartburn. It was indigestion. It wasn't anything else. Rebecca asks, what's the best way to remember to use self-compassion techniques? Right. We're getting a lot of questions like this, I should say.
Yeah. And of course, so really the you might say the mindfulness spell for self-compassion is pain, emotional or physical pain. And so when you start practicing self-compassion, you learn the habit of whenever you're really upset emotionally or frightened, or again, it can also be with physical pain, you just remember, okay, this is a moment of suffering. I need to try to respond with a sense of connectedness and kindness to myself. And so it's not so much you practice you can do self-compassion meditations. I have a lot on my website, but it's really something you do in the middle of the day whenever that pain hits you. It could be 3 a.m, it could be when you turn on the news. And so really it's a mindset. It's a mindset. Instead of thinking that, I shouldn't complain, or just kind of I'm going to soldier through, or that kindness is somehow going to make me weak. Once you realize that this is actually a strength and a coping resource, it just becomes, it's like this friend that accompanies you throughout the day, your own self-compassion, whenever you need it. And so you can think of the first pang of emotional or physical pain as your mindfulness spell. Oh, that's right. I need some self-compassion right now.
just for context, people don't know what a mindfulness bell is. That's often used in retreat settings where people occasionally ring a bell at a random time to remind you to wake up from whatever
that's right.
sleepwalking you've been doing. And that's what you just described is what I've been doing for the last year or so in my own life around a concern that I discussed earlier, which may sound frivolous because it's from the pre-corona era, but just around self-criticism of this sort of aging physique, it can become. I think it starts with developing a habit around that little hack, and then, as you say, it can become a mindset. And a related question from Director Dave 1, that's his handle, Director Dave 1. Dr. Neff, in a time where some of us are giving so much to others, any tips for making sure we take care of ourselves?
Yes. So self-compassion is incredibly important for caregivers, whether you're a professional caregiver or just a family caregiver. So what we know from the research is that self-compassion is really key for preventing burnout. Because if you give and you give and you give and you don't give compassion to yourself, you're going to have no resources left. Now, there's a lot of talk about self-care for caregivers, and self-care is great, and the more the better. But the reality is many people don't have time for self-care. And so self-compassion is not just like taking a bath or getting a massage. It means that if I'm caring for someone and I feel overwhelmed, I feel stressed, so my son's autistic and he's home from school and, it's a lot. So what I do in those moments is I just remember, it's my empathic pain or my caregiver pain is valid. I honor it as a type of suffering. I'm kind to myself because of it. I remember I'm not alone. And then the more I can fill my own heart with compassion, actually, the more I have available to give to him. Another technique you can use is the breath. We have to breathe in and breathe out, otherwise we die, right? So what you can do is imagine, and we teach this to doctors by the bedside, you imagine as you breathe in, you're breathing in for yourself, you're filling yourself with compassion for your stress, for your overwhelm, for your fear, your whatever it is you're feeling, your pain. And then as you breathe out for the person you're caring for. And you can actually adjust the ratio. So if you need a little more, you just focus more on the in-breath. Or if you really feel, taken with the other person's condition, you can focus more on the out-breath. But you always remember to breathe in and out, because if we don't do both, it's not sustainable.
Michelle asks, how do we deal with anxiety when we are shopping? But this is something I really relate to. I've been doing quite a bit of shopping recently, both us and our neighbor. She says, I had to go to the store today and almost had a breakdown from the stress and anxiety that goes with being public with this crisis.
Yeah, so again, I think a lot of us are feeling that, right? It is very anxiety provoking, the uncertainty and all, the physical anxiety with the coronavirus, but also financial insecurity. It's just everything's piling on. And so really put it this way, the choice of getting rid of your anxiety is not available, right? It's not an option. I wish it were. I wish I could wave a magic wand. I'm sure we all do and make this go away, but it's not an option. Our only way out is through. Our only way out is as we go through this crisis, however long it takes, trying to be with ourselves in as supportive and kind and loving way as possible. And that won't make the pain go away, but it will help you be able to bear the pain, right? So as we hold the pain of anxiety or loneliness or whatever it is, if we can give ourselves the sense of kindness and connection and presence, then it means we've got more resources with which to hold the pain. Right. In many ways, what compassion is love that holds pain, the ability to hold pain with love. And that ability is an incredible strength that will help you get through. It won't make the pain go away, though, and that's just sadly the fact of life. But it can help tremendously. It can help tremendously. It can help you from being overwhelmed by the pain. That's what it does.
Thank you, Kristin. Before we go, I just want to do a little shout out here, or a set of requests at the end of the show. We always ask for a few bits that's in the video description. That would be awesome because it helps us get better at what we do. 2 is if you can tell everybody about these sanity breaks we're doing, that would be great because we also want to grow our community. And if you are a healthcare worker and or if you know somebody who's a healthcare worker, we want to get the word out about the fact that we're giving away our app, 10% Happier, our meditation app, for free. You can just go to 10%.com/care. Tomorrow, we have a great guest, an obscure meditation teacher by the name of Joseph Goldstein, who's a big deal in the Western meditation world, and actually globally in terms of meditation. He happens to be my teacher as well. So he'll be on here tomorrow. We're really excited about that. And I also want to point out that Kristin has a self-compassion guide, which is useful during COVID-19. And we put a link to that in the video description. So go check that out, because as you've just heard, Kristin is just flowing over with useful information. Thanks so much, Kristin, for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Hope you're well. Stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Hand on my heart. Stay home, everybody. Stay healthy, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you.